swear to God, every single time I start filming, like 50 motorcycles always have to drive by. I don't understand. Hey guys, it's Hannah, and today I am filming my Genre-thon wrap up. So for those of you who aren't aware and didn't watch my Genre-thon TBR, I participated in Genre-thon this past week, and Genre-thon is a read-a-thon that was hosted by 4 lovely booktubers here on YouTube. Essentially, the purpose of the read-a-thon was to get you to read a wider range of genres, and the only rules were that you had to read at least 3 books, and the 3 books had to be from 3 different genres. So like I mentioned in my TBR video, this is the first read-a-thon that I've ever participated in, and I set out to read a total of 6 books, and I didn't end up reading all 6 of those books. I read 3 of the books that were on that original TBR, but then I substituted 2 of the books for 2 other books, so I ended up completing a total of 5 books, and I have to say, I'm pretty proud of that. For my first read-a-thon, I think that 5 books in a week, especially when I was busy with school and stuff, is a pretty good number, and I'm very happy with myself, and I really did enjoy this read-a-thon. So without any further ado, let's get into the 5 books that I completed for Genre-thon. So the first book that I completed for Genre-thon was actually a reread for me, and that is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I hadn't read this book since I was in 6th grade, so like 11 or 12 years old, and I did not have an appreciation for this book back then that I do now. I enjoyed it back then, but I really don't think I ever understood it fully. Not that the plot is really complicated and difficult to follow, but I just don't think that my 11 or 12-year-old mind could really grasp this book in the way that I can now. And so rereading it as an adult was just so fantastic and wonderful, and I have come to realize that this is definitely one of my all-time favorite books. Also, reading this really just motivated me to pick up some more of Jane Austen's work, and like I mentioned in my TBR, this is the only book I've ever read by Jane Austen, and a lot of you guys left me some recommendations for which one to pick up next, and a lot of you said Emma, so I started reading Emma actually, and now I'm on like chapter 10, and I'm loving it. It's fantastic. So I was really happy that I reread this because it really did inspire me to read the rest of her books as well. And with no surprise, I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I read for Genre-thon was T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, Proof Rock, and Other Poems. This was required reading for my English class, and we only had to read one of the poems, but I just decided to read the whole thing and just count it as a book during Genre-thon. I actually very much enjoyed this. I'm a big fan of the Lost Generation and modernism and that whole like disillusionment with society type of thing, and I love reading about this time period and reading the authors from this time period, which you will actually notice in the rest of this wrap-up, but we'll get to that later. So it was just really great for me to be able to read the rest of his poetry. I very much enjoyed it. I think he's a fantastic poet. Kind of difficult, but I like that type of thing. I like when I have to delve into poetry and decipher the meaning of things. I'm very much that type of reader, so I loved this one, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I completed for Genre-thon was another required reading for my English class, but I actually didn't have to complete it last week. I have to read it this coming week, so I just decided to read it early, and that is In Our Time by Ernest Hemingway. Like I mentioned in my TBR video, Hemingway is one of my favorite Lost Generation authors. I really, really love his work. I love his short stories, but I'd never read like the actual collection of his short stories before. However, I have to say that I was kind of disappointed in this one. This one mostly focused on the Nick Adams stories, and those are some of my least favorite of his short stories. So while there were a few in here that I really did enjoy, for the most part, I just wasn't that thrilled with them, so I ended up giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't dislike it because I pretty much always enjoy reading Hemingway, but I also just wasn't super engrossed into it, so it was kind of more of a disappointing one for me. Continuing on with the theme of the Lost Generation and modernism, the next book that I read for Genre-thon was one of the books that I substituted in for a different book, and that is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. This is a reread for me. I think this is the 3rd time I've completed this book. This is one of my all-time favorite books, and I love rereading it because every single time I reread this book, I notice something different and it brings new meaning to the entire work. And again, like Pride and Prejudice, after rereading this, I kind of just want to go and read everything else Fitzgerald has ever written because, again, this is the only Fitzgerald book I have ever read, which I don't understand why I don't decide to pick up the rest of his work or like the rest of Jane Austen's work when I really like the one book that I have read. So of course, 5 out of 5 stars, one of my all-time favorite books, a spontaneous book that I just randomly decided to pick up during Genre-thon, but I'm very, very happy that I did. And finally, the last book that I read during Genre-thon was actually inspired by the last video that I posted, my most intimidating TBR tag, because I talked about this book in there, and then once I was talking about it, I realized I should just probably pick it up and finish it, and that book is The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. I had been reading this book for months and months and months. I honestly don't even know how long. So just like last minute yesterday, I decided to pick this up and finish it, and I finally finished it, and I'm so happy that I did. I've mentioned many times before, but I'm a huge fan of the Lord of the Rings movies and the Hobbit movies, and I'd never read the books, so I told myself that I had to read them because I don't like watching movies that are based off of books and not reading the books. I don't even care if I read them afterwards, I just have to read them at some point. So like I said, this took me forever to read, and that's very much because it's a very description-heavy book, and there are just some scenes in here that I feel like are kind of unnecessary and can drag on, and it can get a little bit tedious. And because of that, I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. There were definitely aspects of it that I really did enjoy, but there were other parts that I thought that it could do without, and there were parts that I thought that the movies did better. So I was just kind of disappointed in this one, and this is very similar to how I felt about The Hobbit as well. It was just not the same to me, and that's maybe because I watched the movies first, but I just didn't really enjoy myself, like I said, while reading it, so I can't really give it a higher rating than that. But I am very, very happy that I finally finished it, and I can cross it off my list. So there you go, guys, that is it for my Genre-thon wrap-up. So let me know in the comments down below if you participated in Genre-thon, and let me know how many books you completed, what those were, and which one your favorite one was. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next video. Bye! Also, the sequel, I think, is even longer than this one, so that's like a real time commitment that I'm not about right now.